Thanks, everybody. Welcome to Build. I'm your host, Ricky Camilleri. Our next guest is the star of the most radical show currently on Broadway. It's a revival of Oklahoma, and it sees the pie-in-the-sky optimism of the 1943 original as something much more sinister, sexy, and Brechtian. Rebecca Naomi Jones stars as Laurie Williams, the object of affection in this classic Rodgers and Hammerstein frontier musical. Let's take a look.
Oh, what a beautiful morning. Oh, what a beautiful day. Well, I got a beautiful feeling. Everything's going my way. Don't praise my charm too much. Don't look so vain with me. Don't stand in the rain with me. Don't touch my hat. People will say we're in love. They'll see it's all right with me. People will say we're in love.
Everybody, please welcome the incredibly talented Rebecca Naomi Jones. Let's hear it. Hi.
Hi.
Thank you so much for being here. Okay.
Okay.
This play is incredible. It's nothing that is expected when it comes to this play. I don't think that video, as wonderful it was to hear the song, gives anything away. But did you ever think when you started acting, that when you started singing, you would be cast as Laurie in Oklahoma?
Never once, no.
Right.
Yeah, even when I was asked to audition for it, I this is such a strange thing to say, but my first reaction was sort of an annoyance that I got this email, because I was like, who even thought to send me this email? Like, nobody's gonna cast me as Laurie in Oklahoma, and also I no shade to Oklahoma, but like I don't have any. At the time, I was like, I don't have any interest in being Laurie in Oklahoma. Like, I'm gonna be asked to be a robot and not an actor, and to sound like someone else instead of myself. And that's just not the kind of work that I'm interested in. I might love to see a version of Oklahoma, but probably wouldn't want to do it. And then I saw that it was happening at St. Anne's Warehouse in Brooklyn, which I know to be a place that does art with a capital A. And so I was
And a Walsh play there right now.
Right, exactly. And so that's when I was like, oh, this must be something that I should stop rolling my eyes at and see what else is in this email. And of course.
What else was in that email? How did they describe the show to you? Because, yeah, how did they describe what they were trying to do?
Well, the plot thickens because there was no description of what they were trying to do. And let me tell you, there was no description when I was auditioning, and there was no description in rehearsal either. I will say in the audition breakdown, it said to sing these songs. For me, it was Many a New Day and the little a cappella part of Out of My Dreams that I do at the end of Act 1 in our production. It's the end of Act 1. And
You're basically alone on stage.
correct.
Yeah.
And in the audition breakdown, it said to sing the songs in any keys that I wanted to, in any style that felt right for my voice and sort of spoke to me for these songs, as long as it didn't feel like the traditional musical theater way. So I was like, okay, well, if they're open, then I'll go in and see what this is.
What does that mean to you, the traditional musical theater way?
I think it means like you don't have to sing it in the original key, and you don't have to sing it in what is referred to as a legit singing voice. So I didn't have to many a new day.
But you can do it.
Yeah, I could do it, but other people could do it better. So they won't cast me if that's what they want, which is fine. But in terms of knowing what we were doing, that sort of didn't happen until we were like close to previews for our previous production at St. Anne's Warehouse, because Daniel Fish, our director, does not like to talk about like what it is that we're doing. he likes to just do it.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I know that he had staged it prior to St. Anne's at Bard,
Correct.
right? And some of the members of the cast were part of that. And do you know how different the show is or has become since that initial staging at Bard?
I think there are some things that have stayed with it as pretty much the same, with the exception of things like the Dream Ballet, which I think has changed time and time and time again. And
Ballet.
the Dream Ballet, the people who were at Bard have stories about previous iterations of the Dream Ballet, but and a couple of other things too. Like I think Many a New Day was something that Daniel kept wanting to crack in different ways, and I think we finally sort of figured out how it works for this production. But yeah, it's. I think a lot of it has remained generally the same. Like I think he knew he wanted this kind of set and this kind of lighting and.
So he just likes to do it. He doesn't like to talk about it. Was there a moment where you were preparing for St. Anne's and you were getting towards the first performances and you thought to yourself, "Oh, this is what we're doing." And what did you think about it what was your opinion of it when you started to realize what it was you were doing?
I think for the longest time, I knew what we weren't doing, which was applying any sort of coyness or wink to the language when we spoke to each other, speaking to each other as plainly and earnestly as possible. And I knew that we weren't doing a whole lot of dancing or any sort of anything that felt like a lot of flair to sort of cover up anything in the text or apologize for anything in the text. So I knew we were doing something that was a very clean version of exploring this script and this story. And then, but I didn't really understand beyond that why people were like, "Oh my God, I saw it at Bard and it was amazing," nor did I really understand why members of the cast who had done it before were like, "Just wait," and I was like, "Okay," but I knew they were here, and I knew I was intrigued by what we were doing, and so finally we were towards the end of tech rehearsals and we were doing run-throughs, and Daniel, at least at St. Anne's, never let us. When we were doing run-throughs, never let us do our sort of reprise of the song Oklahoma that we do at the end of our production. And there was one run-through that we had where we had been doing run-throughs, and I think he just knew that we were on the cusp of clicking into what this show is trying to get at. And so one day we went through the show, and I think I was swept up in what this weird, wild story is, and we were able to sing through to the end and sing through that last Oklahoma, and I finally understood the questions that the play is asking about our country.
It's so interesting is like such a vague, crappy word, but the way that he has stripped the play of certain, I guess like you said, kind of like coyness about it, even though I think that coyness was probably meant to be there when it was initially written.
Yep.
But forcing you as the performers to sometimes be extremely flat and dry has brought out all these different questions in regards to the text. I'm sure that has been done before, but I've never really seen that done before.
Yeah.
With something like this. I mean, people, restage classic works all the time, but rarely do they do something completely revisionist that is yet still basically the same text.
Yeah, that's what I think is so exciting about it, is because it's not trying to apologize for, as I said before, but it's not trying to apologize for any other versions of this play, and it's not trying to apologize for what this play is saying or has in it to say, as well as all the other joyous things that it has said in the past. So yeah, I think there's something really exciting about just stripping something down and exploring what this text might say about where we are now and how we might fall in love with it in a different way now.
Well, like I mean, just the way that the death of Judd is explored in this versus the way that it's talked about in the original. It is essentially in the original, he dies. It's basically an accident, and everybody should kind of move on with their lives because he was a hired hand, and like we're all people who have lives ahead of us, and
Yeah.
he didn't.
Yeah.
That is explored as a form of optimism in the original Broadway, in the original musical. In this, it is all about the white privilege of Curly and the way that the town kind of rallies around hiding his crime.
Yeah, I mean, I think yes, and I think also our version is about a person who has most likely a mental health issue, and his community doesn't understand how to deal with him, and so decides that he's scary and dangerous, and perhaps he does have some of those things in him. I think he does. It's in the script. But I think, I mean, as you're getting at, we watch this community circle the wagons and sort of decide to protect their own and cast someone else out so that they can hold on to some sense of usness. And so I think that's what's so.
Well, and also the idea, like, are we going to ruin this young man's life for one mistake, which is a phrase we have heard countless times.
Yes, that's right. That's absolutely right. Yeah, it's getting at something that's a much larger issue.
Which again, it's like, it's not what the original musical was getting at all, but just reworking the performances and the set like brings out all these different ideas.
Well, it's also just like, I think people often just sort of breeze through that last scene, which is sort of the trial scene after Judd dies. And so all we're doing is really hearing the text and what these people are saying. And it's, I mean, in my opinion, it's kind of madness. This person who lives in our community, who has worked for us and with us and has expressed care for us, has just died. And we're all like, okay, can we go on with the wedding?
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy.
It's interesting though you say breeze through it in the original musical, because I felt like you guys breezed through it as well, but in a completely different way. Nobody is emoting. Everybody is very flatly saying what they want and how to do it, which creates an almost like psychopathic dynamic of the townspeople who are just like, he's dead, just move on.
Yeah. Well, I just said this morning to someone, that someone on Instagram described our show as America as a horror satire.
Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
There's that as well.
Yeah.
What did you think when you found out that you were going to be going from St. Anne's to Broadway?
I was thrilled. I was certainly thrilled. I was somewhat surprised because this show doesn't necessarily feel like a show that's perfectly packaged for the Broadway. I was thrilled. I mean, people had wondered about it the whole time we were there, because
St. Anne's?
Yeah, because we were really lucky to get critical acclaim and
Well, a sold-out run too for the at St. Anne's, I believe, right?
Yeah, and and audiences loved it there, but that's Brooklyn, and this is Broadway, and so I was really, really pumped, but also somewhat surprised. I mean, I knew it was possible, but I was surprised. But I think what's another wonderful thing about Daniel Fish is that he's been like, I know it's going to get crazy up here, and there are going to be a lot of other things on our mind and like extracurricular things we're going to be doing, and there's going to be a lot of hype and all that stuff, but we have to remember we're doing our show, Uptown.
Yeah.
And, some people will hate it and some people will love it, and we're still doing our show. So.
And did the show change at all from St. Anne's to Uptown?
Yeah, I mean, it changed just naturally because the space that we're in is so different. Not so different, but at St. Anne's we were in sort of like a runway staging, so it was like audience on one side, audience on one side, wall on this side, wall on this side, and now we're horseshoe, exactly appropriate, and which is really nice because it feels like there's just better sightlines for the audience, which is a big deal, and the sound just is working better where we are now as well. There was just some issues in terms of sound at St. Anne's because the aesthetic is so natural. And even though we had microphones, it was like really, it was very minimal. And so it's like the sound is just working better up here.
Yeah,
on
it's not
Broadway.
necessarily a theater designed for musical theater. Is
That's
it
right.
St.
St.
Anne's?
Anne's. That's
Yeah.
right. It's not. So that was a little bit tricky, especially in the beginning. But also, yeah, little things have changed. I think there were little tweaks that Daniel always wanted to make, or things that he wasn't always sure about, and so we got to spend some extra time figuring those things out. And the Dream Ballet has changed quite a bit as well. There's been a
Really?
lot more tech added. Yeah.
Oh, right, like the boots? Were the boots at St. Anne's?
The boots were at St. Anne's, but not in the same rhythm. They came like one at a time individually, and now I think they're in groups.
The person that I was with while we were at the show, when the show ended, she turned to me and she said, "It got me at the boots." She was like, "I was kind of, I knew I liked it, but I was just sort of unsure what was happening."
Mm-hmm.
And then the boots started falling from the ceiling, and the show got me then.
I'll take that.
Well, I kind of believe that too, because there is this sense of like, if you don't know anything about what you're getting into, the first act is like this kind of like you're just figuring out.
Yeah.
It's a weird dynamic between you and the show, because you're like,
Yes.
what are they doing? How, like, it's not until, I think it's really not until the final moments of the show where you recognize why the whole show has been like this.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, actually.
And then and it's a thrilling feeling, because everything, while it's wildly entertaining and wonderful, everything becomes worth it all
Yes.
of a sudden,
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the lights are also on in the house for so much of the show, and so the audience feels somewhat implicated.
Yeah.
And I'm sure for a lot of that, you're like, why? But why?
Right, and when the lights die down for Curly and Judd's duet together, it's basically a duet.
Yeah,
It's mostly Curly's
mostly
song.
Curly, yeah.
That's what it starts to creep in.
Yes.
What this is about.
Yes.
But it's not until those final moments where you really recognize what the show has been trying to say.
Yeah.
And I totally fell in love.
Oh, I'm so glad.
Yeah.
I'm so glad.
When did you first start performing?
Gosh, I was really young. My father was a musician, and I loved singing from a really, really young age. And
Was it musical theater from a young age?
no, it started as just singing. I sang in the Metropolitan Opera Children's Chorus from when I was like 7 to 11 or something.
Were you born and raised New Yorker?
I am. Yeah. This was my Tower Records.
Many a guest have been.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I love
This
it.
is very weird.
It's pretty weird. I remember like the cassettes were up there. It's like it's my life. This is my life. So it's really weird, and I'm old. Yes, my father was a musician, and I grew up singing. And I never wanted to be an opera singer, but I did. I just wanted to sing, no matter what. And so at some point, a friend of mine who I think I did modern dance classes with told me that she was singing in the Met and that I should audition for it. And so I sang in the Met for those years, and then took private lessons with the woman who led the children's chorus for years as well. And then it was like 6th grade that my friend Claude Kelly, who's actually a big composer for recording artists now, it's really funny. This was our Tower Records. He dragged me to the auditions for the 5th and 6th grade production of The Jungle Book, and that's kind of where I was like, oh, theater.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
And so it was like 5th and 6th grade that you were like, I like to perform, not just as a singer, but as an actress.
Yeah, I think I always loved theater. Like if my parents took me to see theater, I remember seeing theater as a kid and being like so into it. But I always thought I wanted to like write songs and be a recording artist.
Right.
And then I was like in the audition for The Jungle Book. I remember it being like working on my accent for Bagheera the Panther and being like, this is really cool. and then rehearsal, which like is still my favorite part of being an actor. Like
Any good theater kid, you were like, this is really cool. And then you left the theater and you're like, no, it's not.
no one cares. Yeah, exactly. It's the same still. But yeah, it's just
you're on Broadway. Now it's cool to everybody.
it's cool
Yeah.
adjacent. Yeah. But yeah, my favorite part was being in rehearsal. Like I fell in love with it when I got to like put on a character. It was the costume too. I was like, okay. I'm on board. But when I got to just be in rehearsal with my friends and get to become friends with people who were in different classes and like tell stories and make up backstories, I was like, this is thrilling.
Yeah.
So I think for me, it was like that sense of community that really hooked me.
I have to ask, do you remember the first CD or tape that you bought?
That's a great question.
Because you were in the Tower Records.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to have been in the Tower, but it made me
Oh
wonder.
man, I had so many like good and so many embarrassing ones.
My first many were very embarrassed.
Yeah, it's rough. It's rough. I mean, I definitely had like, who were like you don't know might hurt you. What were they called? Oh man, I like went to their concert too. Oh man, they had like a clever name.
My first concert, Color Me Bad.
Oh, good one.
Says you.
That's a good one.
Nope.
Oh, that's funny.
I was like 6 and I watched like one song and then we went. It was at like an amusement park. So then
Sure.
we went back to. I was like, I'm bored. I want to go on roller coasters.
Yeah. That's fair.
First CD, Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch.
Wow, you're killing it.
I am not.
You're killing
No,
it with
that
these
was.
choices.
Yeah,
No, this
those
is good.
Those were. I mean, I guess good choices for a 6-year-old.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's funny. Yeah, I mean, I would like to be at a party and hear those songs now. You know what I mean?
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
You'd be like, take me back.
That is true. That may be why I have such an incredible sense of irony.
That's
And why
it.
I'm always like YouTubing horrible music all the time.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, this is fun. And everyone's like, no, it's not.
No, that's not how it goes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I wore my Paula Abdul Forever Your Girl tape. Ow. I wore it out.
Genuinely talented, though.
Yes,
Like, yeah.
she is. But also those
Color Me
songs
Bad,
were
Marky Mark,
so good.
Debatable.
Yeah,
Their
too.
talent.
No, you're right. No, you're right. But
Paula
there were
Abdul.
some hits.
Yeah.
Paula Abdul though, that what was that video? That sexy video.
The one with the cat.
No,
Oh.
that's a great video though. I got so mad. No, the
cat
video
is
like when
not
they're in the
sexy.
dance rehearsal. Come on.
It's black and white, right? Isn't it?
No, it's like, but it does seem black and white for a lot of it because it's like sepia.
Yeah. I vaguely
What is
remember
that?
this one.
It's not straight up. It's Cold Hearted Snake. Ooh,
Do you remember
child.
the one with Keanu Reeves?
Yes, Rush.
Rush.
Hurry,
that-
hurry,
yeah,
lover,
Rush,
come to
Rush,
me.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. I always thought that video was really funny.
Oh yeah, me too.
It's like one of those like slow motion, like because it's in slow motion, it's romantic.
Yeah.
Like the whole idea behind the music video was like if they're in slow motion, everyone will swoon.
That's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we have some questions from the audience. Who has a question right here?
Hi.
Hi.
So I'm really excited to see the show and get to know you as well. Just a question about working with a piece that's devised and how do you keep up with that stamina? And I haven't seen the show, but I've seen the commercial. I'm like, oh my gosh, she's so viscerally in her emotions. But how do you keep that going on for 8 shows a week?
That's a great question because it is a lot of work, particularly with this show, but with any show. What helps me quite a bit is the fact that I have so many good people and good actors on stage with me. And so I know when I'm really exhausted or not feeling my best, I can just rely on the many hours of rehearsal that we've done together and trust in what we have built together, and then just like lock in with my scene partner and try and listen to them and, feed off of their energy. And that helps me show up 8 times a week and, never phone it in. Yeah.
Guys, what I'm curious about, you must love theater and you must love going to the theater, but being a working actress in the theater, I bet you don't get to see any shows at all.
Yeah, that's mostly true. When I'm working, I don't have time to see theater.
And I would imagine you'd like to always be working too.
Correct. Yes. Yes. That's the optimal position. But and it's just one of those tricky things too, because when you're not working, you have less money to see theater.
Theater's not cheap.
Correct. Correct. But I find my way. So the last couple of things I saw really blew my mind, like what the Constitution means to me. It's amazing. I didn't see it now that it's on Broadway, but I saw it prior, and actually The Jungle at St. Anne's after we closed. Amazing. It's in San Francisco now. I think it's like making its rounds throughout the country. But yeah, I do love theater. I wish I could see all of it. I mean, there are things on Broadway right now that I wish I could, go support my friends in. But
Yeah. A couple more questions. What do we got? Right here.
Hi.
How are you?
Well,
Cool question is, do you prefer live theater where anything could happen, like the car and Hedwig swinging back and forth,
yes.
or film? You know.
Oh, that's a great question. I feel like theater's my home. And what I love about theater still is rehearsal. I mean, like being in a room with the same people for 3 to 4 weeks rehearsing a play that we're all going to do together is my favorite part about being an actor, hands down. I always feel a little bit like once we're in performance mode, it feels a little bit like a little minor death because we don't get to just be enmeshed in building a story together anymore. It's suddenly there's all this anxiety and desire to show up 8 times a week and always be our best, which you can't be. Some shows it's like, well, it's degrees, but
There's no more dissection of what you're doing, and I mean maybe there's like little things I bet that everyone talks about and like, oh, maybe I should try that again next time. But there isn't as much kind of like figuring out why you say things and how you say them because of that.
Yes, unless you're really lucky, and I feel like especially with this piece, we're so lucky because I feel like new things occur to you all the time. Like sometimes I'm just discovering new things about why I'm saying this line in this moment. Like, oh, it's because 2 scenes ago this happened, and that's really exciting to do theater, and get to revisit these lines and these relationships.
How often do you find with this show, because oftentimes actors will say, a line will occur to me why I say that, but how often do you find with this show it's how you're supposed to say a line? Because the lines are the same from before, but it's all about how you and the rest of the cast are doing it that really amplifies and changes the text or adds a subtext.
Yeah. Do you mean from night to night? Like,
yeah, like you said that it'll occur to me that I'm saying this line because of something 2 scenes ago. I'm wondering if there's been a direction given where you suddenly go, oh, I say it this way because it does this it reverberates around the show in this other way.
Yeah, in some ways. I mean, again, Daniel doesn't like to sort of like tell you why he wants you to do something a certain way. So which is really exciting ultimately when you've sort of begun to understand what his whole shtick is, when you get on board. But
he's a mystery man.
He is a mystery man. But I know, Daniel has like a very intense way of structuring how things work, but there is always room within that. So like he wants me to say this line in sort of like a downward inflection and very directly, but I might discover a month later that it occurs to me in this other way, and it's totally feasible for Daniel to be on board with that version as long as it still feels like very direct and natural, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
I think we have one more question.
Hey, Rebecca, how
Hi.
you doing? So I want to kind of change it up a little bit. In terms of like your experiences growing up, having a Jewish mother and a black father, what were some of the challenges, whether positive or negative, that you faced growing up?
Yeah, I was just saying backstage that like one very minor issue was my hair. My mother was the Jewish one and my father was a man. So, and his hair was always short. And so they were kind of like, it's anybody's guess, because I have massive hair, and my mom was just like, oh, just keep brushing it, and it just kept getting puffier and puffier. So that was a learning process. And I grew up here, as I said, and so I didn't really discover how much it was a thing to be of mixed race and to be of mixed religion until later. Because I grew up here, I knew so many types, and my parents were always really open about that, and were pretty particular as well about, like, my mother. I remember being like, yeah, when you were a kid, there would randomly be these requests for play dates with you, and I felt like people were trying to, like, use you as like a prop to. It was a whole thing. So my mom's the white one, and she was like, I kind of was like, she could like have a radar for that. But but it was like kind of when I went to college. Really, was when I understood. I went to college in North Carolina, and I loved it. I went to North Carolina School of the Arts, and it was an art school, and it was awesome. But being there is where I started to understand, like, oh, this is weird that I'm half black and half Jewish, and I started to really understand how complicated race is, and people's opinions about all of what comes with that. Yeah.
Okay.
But it's been, it's also been wonderful and beautiful and exciting.
Thank you.
I think we have one more question.
Okay.
Right here. Hi.
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 How's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm great. I was wondering if you could talk more about the movie you have coming out today.
Oh, yeah. Yes, there is a movie that is out today called Someone Great. It's out on Netflix. I keep doing a lot with my hands up here. I don't know who that is. Yes, Gina Rodriguez is starring in it and is one of the main producers on it. And this awesome woman, Jennifer Caton Robinson, wrote it and directed it. And it also stars Brittany Snow and DeWanda Wise and Lakeith Stanfield. And it's an awesome rom-com that is, for our time. And it's my favorite thing about it is that it feels like a celebration of what it means to be a woman in a long-term friendship with other women and how that can really pick us up off the floor. And it's also sort of a love story to New York City and how it continues to change so quickly and heartbreakingly, and and how we pick ourselves up and survive. But it's great, and I play, well, should I not say? I play the girlfriend of DeWanda Wise's character, and it's really fun and lovely.
Did you get to do any scenes with Lakeith?
No, I didn't. I was really hoping so. I'm good friends with Brian Henry, who's on Atlanta with him, and so I was hoping to tell him how much I love his work in that show and everything. But no, we did not have scenes together.
He's a character.
Yeah?
He's a really fun character. Yeah.
I believe it. I believe it. Yeah, he seems kind of out there in a good way.
Yes, 100%. But that's out today on Netflix?
Yeah, out today.
Someone Great on
Someone
Netflix
Great.
today.
Yeah.
Oklahoma, currently at the Circle in the Square
Yeah.
Theater. And it's absolutely incredible.
Thank
I'm
you.
probably going to go again. I can't
Please
wait to see it.
do. Please
Everybody,
do.
please give a round of applause for Rebecca Naomi Jones. Let's hear it.